Brazil's president continues to downplay COVID-19 as the death toll now exceeds 11,000. Mali's National Assembly elects a new speaker. And India registers more than 4,000 new COVID-19 cases in just 24 hours. Welcome to Telesur. I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is from the South. The number of people who have died from the coronavirus pandemic in Brazil has surpassed 11,000. Our correspondent, Brian Meir, has the details.
Brazil reached the 11,000 mark in deaths from the deadly coronavirus pandemic over the weekend, propelling it into 6th place in the world's list of worst countries for the pandemic. As far-right President Jair Bolsonaro spent Saturday jet skiing and barbecuing and visiting fans without using any kind of protective equipment, continuing to tell people that they shouldn't worry about it, that it's just a little flu, the governors increased their lockdown measures. In the state of Maranhão, Communist Governor Flávio Dino issued a decree yesterday taking over the emergency rooms of all of the state's private hospitals. Meanwhile, Sao Paulo has worked hard to lower the occupancy rate of its ICU units. In the past week, ICU unit occupancy dropped from 90 to 83% in Sao Paulo, the capital, which is the hardest hit city in the state, and the statewide level is 67%. Now, Sao Paulo remains the epicenter of coronavirus transmission in Brazil. It has 3,700 deaths and over 40,000 cases documented so far. And the governor has announced that he's not going to ease any of the lockdown measures until the ICU hospital occupancy rates drop below 60% statewide level. That's definitely going to take a little more time because the death rates continue to increase. So for now, there is no sign that the lockdown measures implemented by the state governors are going to ease up despite far-right President Bolsonaro's anti-scientific conspiracy theory rhetoric.
That was Brian Meir from Brazil. Meanwhile, at least 22 homeless people have died, while another 40 are suspected of being infected with COVID-19 in the city of Sao Paulo. The center of the city is crowded with homeless people sleeping in tents, under bridges, or in public squares, which makes them more vulnerable to the coronavirus. The number of homeless in the city of Sao Paulo has increased 53% in the last 4 years, topping 24,000 in 2019, according to City Hall data.
Our worst problem is the lack of housing. If we had a home, I would be there during the quarantine. I wouldn't be in the street. The coronavirus is just one more problem we face.
This situation we are facing now just highlights the big drama of inequality. There was a post on social media that exemplified this. We cannot say everybody's in the same boat. We can say we're in the same sea. Ones are in their yacht, others are swimming.
Uruguay's government says it will allow the crew of a virus-infected Australian cruise ship, Greg Mortimer, to disembark at a port in the capital, Montevideo. A senior government official said the crew will be bused to a special equipped hotel to undergo quarantine. 2 people who are seriously ill have already been hospitalized. The crew remained on board long after the ship's passengers were allowed to disembark and flown to their home countries last month.
Not at all. Everyone is calm, very quiet. When you are a sailor, you prepare for a desertion, a fire, but never for a virus, right? But everyone is calm, and I think happy to be here.
Various social and political sectors in Colombia have condemned the recent state spending to buy equipment for the special riot police force. Social organizations say the funds should have been used to help citizens deal with the economic consequences of the coronavirus lockdown.
En momentos de aislamiento obligatorio,
the economic crisis has worsened during the mandatory quarantine for Colombia's most vulnerable people. Many have been forced into the streets to beg for help to get them through this crisis.
In the middle of the pandemic, 9.5 billion pesos will be spent to buy 81,000 tear gas canisters and 13,000 bullets, like the ones used to murder Dylan Cruz for the special riot police. This contract was started on April 20 by President Duque. In dollars, it amounts to $2.3 million.
The contract also mentions the purchase of over 23,000 marking cartridges, 11,000 stun grenades, and 500 grenades. All of this equipment will go to the hands of the SMAT Special Forces, a police unit that has been questioned over its use of excessive force against citizens.
They have the funds to fully equip a police force that has, over the 5 years, murdered 19 people. But to equip medical personnel during this crisis, there are no funds, even though these people are saving lives. They don't even have enough supplies to do their job. This decision is highly myopic.
In the midst of the COVID-19 emergency and a growing economic crisis, social protests have regained strength to demand help from the government.
We're seeing doublespeak from authorities. The president and the mayor are saying they are guaranteeing our rights, but we have seen the harsh repression used against popular mobilizations. During the first 3 weeks of the quarantine, we saw the special riot police attack citizens indiscriminately. When people were asking for food, hunger is answered with repression, and it's going to be worse now.
State funds have also been assigned to buy tanks and armored trucks for the SMAT and for a social media campaign to improve the image of President Iván Duque, totaling at around $8 million.
Venezuelan officials announced on Sunday night the capture of 8 mercenaries with a role in the failed terrorist plot called Operation Gideon in the state of La Guaira. This latest group was headed by the nephew of Cliver Alcalá Cordones, a former general who admitted to directing paramilitary operations in Rio Hacha, Colombia, linked to opposition member Juan Guaidó. 7 men and 1 woman were among the arrested in Peta, Quirito, about 50 kilometers from Caracas. Total of 14 people linked to the foiled coup plot were arrested on Sunday. Earlier in the day, 3 men were captured by the Special Actions Forces of the Bolivarian National Police in Colonia Tovar in Aragua State. Another 3 mercenaries were caught in San Miguel Carayaca of La Guaira State with alleged links to Operation Gideon. The Vice President of Venezuela visited the small coastal town of Chuao 1 week after a group of local fishermen helped detain 8 mercenaries who tried to mount a failed incursion. This operation called for a number of terrorist attacks, which would have culminated with the kidnapping of the president.
The drums of Chuao sounded to celebrate the triumph of peace and to welcome the Vice President Delcy Rodriguez and the military high command. The authorities visited the town, reaching a patio used to dry cocoa seeds, a symbolic space where the Bolivarian government honored the fishermen and women and also promoted the members of the militia and of the armed forces who took part in the detention of 8 mercenaries. Among those captured here in Chuao were the leaders of the operation and 2 U.S. citizens.
We couldn't imagine what the term Bolivarian fury actually meant until Monday, May 3rd, when these people came out to defend the sacred sovereignty of Venezuela. We would have always come up short trying to define what our people would be willing to do if anyone dared to defile the territorial integrity of Venezuela, our right to self-determination and sovereignty.
The organized people of Chuao asked the vice president to take a message to President Maduro.
Please let the president know that any person who dares harm Venezuela, that person who dares to harm President Nicolas Maduro, will have to deal with the black people of Chuao. The Venezuelan Afro-descendants let the president know.
The community cleared any doubts about the union which exists between the government, the armed forces, and the Bolivarian militia.
We are the sons and daughters of Commander Hugo Chavez. Let the world know we are the brothers and sisters of our President Nicolas Maduro Moros.
Nicolás Maduro Moro.
Defense Minister Vladimir Pedrino Lopez highlighted the importance of the civilians' participation for last week's successful repeal of the terrorist plot.
This could have been possible if the people had not spotted the terrorists, if they had not warned us. Our soldiers bravely flew over the area and spotted the fishermen, but also saw the mercenaries who were coming to cause death and terror. Congratulations to all of you.
This was the latest victory in a long road of attacks and resistance that the Venezuelan people have been walking on since the start of the revolution.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again in a minute. Thank you for joining us again. The World Health Organization has warned countries against rushing to lift COVID-19 measures before the pandemic is under control.
The good news is that there has been a great deal of success in slowing the virus and ultimately saving lives. However, such strong measures have come at a cost, and we recognize the serious socio-economic impact of the lockdowns, which have had a detrimental effect on many people's lives. Therefore, to protect lives and livelihoods, a slow, steady lifting of lockdowns is key to both stimulating economies while also keeping a vigilant eye on the virus so that control measures can be quickly implemented if an upswing in cases is identified.
Over a month after stay-at-home orders and 11 days without a COVID-19 case, Trinidad and Tobago has started to lift some restrictions. This includes the extension of business operations for hardwares and supermarkets, restaurants reopening for delivery only, and citizens giving the green light to exercise from this Monday.
So please, this is the new normal. No handshaking, no hugging up, no kissing, and always, once you leave the home, to go anywhere outside of the home. Most important in this phase one, going into the other phases, going into the many months ahead, wear a face covering, wear a mask. You are required to do that. Because what we are saying, and what is the science and the sense, each and every one of us must behave as though we are carrying the virus. And if we are, we don't want it to leave us to go anywhere. Once you leave home, opening our borders, that is phase 6. And that will remain as it is now more than ever. Because if our virus load in the population is so low, then the only place, other than our own populating it, growing it here by misbehavior, the only place that we are exposed to will be an inflow of infected people from the outside. And to prevent that from happening, we do not want to squander the good results of the sacrifices we have made. So we will maintain our border closure until we are satisfied that the external environment is such that we can accept within Trinidad and Tobago persons from heavily infected areas outside.
In South Africa, the opposition Economic Freedom Fighters Party has condemned plans by the government to approach the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank to finance its battle against the coronavirus. The party described the government's decision as a sign of incompetence, ideological confusion, and lack of political will to explore options that will not compromise the country's sovereignty. It reminded the government that the IMF and the World Bank are not charity organizations, but instruments used by the Western countries to recolonize Africa. China has sent a team of 12 medical experts to Zimbabwe to help fight the pandemic. The team arrived in the capital Harare on Sunday along with medical supplies, including ventilators, testing kits, face masks, and protective suits. Zimbabwean health officials thanked China for the gesture, saying it will boost the country's capacity to deal with the COVID-19 pandemic. In other news, 2 people have been killed in a grenade attack in Burundi's capital, Bujumbura. The attack, which took place on Sunday, just days ahead of a general election, was blamed on unidentified criminals who targeted a bar in a working-class district. According to witnesses, the bar belongs to a member of the youth wing of the ruling party, the National Council for the Defense of Democracy. They said the bar occasionally serves as a meeting place for members of the Youth League, which in the past has been accused of engaging in political violence, including calling for the murder and rape of opposition supporters.
I got here and the incident was already over. I found injured people. We asked passing vehicles to take them to Doctors Without Borders. There were about 10 injured people. There were no deaths on the scene, only injuries and property damage, as you have seen.
A top aide to the Democratic Republic of the Congo's President Felix Cecchetti has gone on trial for corruption. Vital Kamerhe, who is the presidential chief of staff, has been in custody since April 8th and is accused of embezzling funds for a government infrastructure program. He denies any wrongdoing, and his supporters who turned up for the hearing claim the charges are part of a political scheme to prevent him from contesting the 2023 presidential elections.
We have to go through this case, whether it's the file on the prefabricated houses or the pharmaceutical supply contract. From top to bottom, when you look at this file, Vital Kamerhe is innocent. There is no proof.
The National Assembly in Mali has elected Moussa Timbine as its new leader. He was declared winner after receiving 134 votes to beat his closest rival, Moussa Mara, who got less than 10 votes. He has previously served as the president of the Youth League of the Rally for Mali party, and he was also the first vice president of the outgoing National Assembly.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Honorable Moussa Timbine, having obtained 134 votes or an absolute majority, is therefore elected President of the National Assembly of Mali.
I thank the Almighty for the grace He has bestowed on me in this blessed month of Ramadan through my election today as President of this venerable National Assembly of Mali.
We'll be right back with more news. Welcome back. Let's continue with news. Russia celebrated the 75th anniversary of the victory against fascism in an atypical way, for the first time in almost 20 years, since COVID-19 prevented the performance of the traditional parade in the Red Square.
In 2019, this was the Red Square on May 9, filled with people celebrating another anniversary of the victory on fascism. However, this May 9, 2020 was celebrated differently. The movement restriction measures caused by COVID-19 forced the postponement of the activities of the 75th anniversary of the victory. However, the date was not missed. President Vladimir Putin arrived at the tomb of the unknown soldier, next to the Kremlin, to pay tribute to the anonymous heroes of the war.
Victory Day continues to have a very great spiritual importance, and our contribution is very important. It is our pride and the history of our country, the history of each family, part of our spirit, which has been transmitted by our grandparents and parents.
Although the terrestrial parade did not take place, 75 helicopters and armed forces aircraft flight over Moscow and 32 other Russian cities. in tribute to the more than 27 million Soviets who died during World War II. Today, despite the quarantine, the colors of the Russian flag painted the sky again.
We bow our heads before the generation of the winners who did so much for their country. It cannot be measured or paid back. They saved the homeland and the life of future generations. They freed Europe and defended the world. They recovered cities and villages and made amazing achievements.
As the president promised, Victory Day will be celebrated this year when the health situation allows it, with solemnity. But today, the most important thing for all Russians is to pay tribute and remember their heroes.
And Russia's President Vladimir Putin says the lockdown imposed to slow the spread of the coronavirus will be lifted on Tuesday.
Starting on May 12, wherever possible, it is necessary to create conditions for the restoration of the activities of enterprises in the basic sectors of the economy. And this is construction, industry, agriculture, communications, energy, and mining. We have a big country. The epidemiological situation in the region is different. We have taken this factor into account before. And at the upcoming stage, we must act even more subtly, carefully.
At least 123 people have died from COVID-19 in Spain in the last 24 hours. The country's health ministry has, however, said that the pandemic is now under control and that the transmission rate is in its latest phase. The government has also allowed people to go outdoors as the country enters the next stage of easing the lockdown.
We are in a situation where we are actually starting to see in a clear and evident way that we are in the last phases of transmission, but we have to finish controlling it, and we still are in a very important risk of a rise.
India has registered a record jump of 4,213 COVID-19 cases in just 24 hours, as the country prepares to transport thousands of stranded migrants back to their homes. This surge has pushed the total number of cases to more than 67,000, and the number of people who have died from the virus has risen to over 2,200. The government on Monday announced that train services are set to resume on Tuesday.
From the 12th of May, Indian Railways will begin operating passenger trains in a phased manner. These trains, special trains, will leave New Delhi railway station to 15 destinations.
Israeli authorities have demolished the home of a Palestinian man accused of taking part in a bomb attack in the occupied West Bank. Soldiers stormed Qassam Shibli's home on Monday morning before tearing it down, leaving his family in the cold. Shibli is currently in custody facing trial over allegations of being involved in the attack, which took place in an illegal Jewish settlement. Human rights organizations have frequently condemned Israel's policy of demolishing homes of Palestinian prisoners, describing it as a collective punishment that leaves thousands of people homeless.
Unfortunately, the world condemns our Palestinian resistance against this hateful Israeli occupation, as if the Palestinian people are different than other people, and as if they are people who have no right to life. This is my message to the whole world, and not just to Israel, and it is that our people have the right to resist and the right to life.
And with that, we end our news brief, but you can find these and more stories on our website, telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow health protocols where you are and stay safe. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Until next time.